Before we begin, since this is a BBC-owned property, I feel the need to point out that the news arm of the BBC has a continuing issue with transphobic leanings in its news coverage. You can find in a pinned comment below various videos from both myself and other YouTubers covering this issue. And while I understand that the Doctor Who creative team is not responsible for this, I will continue to point this out for as long as it remains a consistent issue. Thank you. And this is why I can't forgive the entire thing. Yeah, Flux has ended, and it ends with the Vanquishers, which I'm actually not entirely sure why it's called that. Whatever. So, to explain my opening bit, as with any serialized story, ultimately, whether or not it feels worth it by the time you get to the end, you have to stick the landing. No matter whatever else, you have to stick the landing and get the thing that it was all leading to needs to at least not be bad, if not great. Ideally great. I mean, it's why Game of Thrones went from the thing at the center of everybody's mind to a show we all watched for a little bit because it ended so bad. And it was serialized. So everything was building to that terrible ending. Is this as bad as the last season of Game of Thrones? No, actually, it's not. However, it does have a similar impact on Flux as a overall thing, because the thing is, I remember when this aired, and I remember up until the airing of this episode, there was a decent number of people. Every time I'd point something out that wasn't working for me, they'd go like, well, you can't judge it yet. We haven't reached the end. Then we got to the end. And while, there are some people who legitimately like it, including the end. And that's fine. You're not wrong. But I will say I heard a lot. For all the people that I heard say, you can't judge it till we get to the end, I don't recall getting too many comments of, see, it got there in the end. Because for me, at least, boy, it really didn't. So, where do we start with this thing? Honestly, this is, you know what? I'll do Chibnall a minor favor. I dislike this for the same reason that same core fundamental reason that I dislike the Big Bang, the Moffat finale, a finale of Series 5. Now, this is what I mean by doing Chibnall a favor. I'm pointing out he's not the only one who makes these kinds of mistakes. So, while I'm not a fan of Chibnall's run, it's not like nobody else screwed up. Now, I know not as many people are on board with not liking Big Bang. A lot of people do. I don't. I like Pandorica Opens. I don't like Big Bang. And the reason I don't like Big Bang is because it doesn't feel like it's telling a story. It feels like it is doing nothing but tying up all of the story threads that the previous episode and, the overarching story of that series had laid out. It doesn't feel like it actually has a narrative of its own. It's just all about tying everything up. And I know that feels like, well, isn't that what something should do? Yeah, but it should also have its own narrative. If you don't have a strong central core narrative to thread the tying up of all these other things through, then you don't engage me very well. And this is that more so. It's kind of funny. This has the whole plot point of the Doctor getting split into 3 and scattered across time. And she's aware that it happened and is kind of in control of all 3, simultaneously. And I really can't help but feel like that was done because it was the only logistical way of tying up all these stories. We literally need 3 versions of our hero to be able to wrap all this up in the one episode we have left. That having been said, it's not an uninteresting idea. It's kind of nifty. There isn't a lot done with it, which is why it feels to me ultimately like such a logistical choice. It's so much of just there's no other way we're gonna have the time to have her resolve everything. We literally need to have 3 versions of her. So that is what it feels like, but it's still kind of fun. Unfortunately, despite literally dividing and conquering with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, she's still stuck mostly with exposition. And you know what? I wonder if that would be less frustrating if she didn't have at least one scene that's genuinely good and isn't just her either delivering or prompting someone else to deliver exposition. And that is the scene where she's being tortured by the Grand Serpent. There's still exposition going on in that scene, but there's also banter. She's winding him up. There's a lot more just personality that she gets to inject. And I'm not saying that like, oh, she had no personality in the Doctor. No, she had it. It's just so often she was stuck delivering technobabble or exposition and didn't get a chance to fully bring the depths of her version of the Doctor across. And I get glimpses of it in scenes like this.
Binary demi-species, but they're really rare. Oh! I'm alright, because you look really cross.
It's fun. It's great. I feel like it's one of the best single scene glimpses into her as a character. And it's coming in the last episode of her last proper series. So it's one of those things where the times when this era works almost makes how much of it doesn't hurt more, because it didn't have to be like this. There are moments that show me what it could have been, but anyway, there are still some nice touches, little things here and there. Like when Yaz and the other companions are reunited with one of the 3 doctors that's running around at that point. The Doctor immediately hugs Yaz. And actually, I think she's the only one she hugs. And Yaz kind of has this big pause moment of holding her. And it's, now accepting, I'm still not a shipper. I still don't really much care for the story that they did with that, especially given that they did so little with it, as with so much in this era. But like, as a moment leading into things that are going to happen later with Yaz, it's a nice moment. It's sweet. It stands out more on a rewatch. I like it. Jericho continues to rule, continues to be absolutely awesome, and I figured out part of what I like so much about him. He's got Hobbit energy. Because when he delivers lines like this,
I, sir, am Professor Eustachius Jericho, Scourge of Scoundrels.
And the fact that this is his last line.
What an awfully big adventure.
That's big Hobbit energy to me. And I love it. I really love him as a character. I would have loved to have seen him as like a companion proper. Not necessarily for this Doctor. I mean, maybe for this Doctor. The only reason I'm hesitant on that is because I continue to argue that the Doctor really should have been with just Yaz to like properly develop that relationship, at the forefront. But whatever. Like him being a companion with this Doctor or later Doctor, any Doctor, would have been great. He's wonderful. I love him. And there's other little bits here and there that kind of work, but most of it doesn't. Mostly for lack of investment. Because as I said, there isn't really a strong central narrative to this. It's just trying to wrap everything up. And even though it literally splits its hero into 3 pieces and sends her all across time and space to be able to tie everything up in time, there's still stuff that this episode seems to flat out forget. So, die inside the passenger form. So Vinder runs into her in there. Okay. And she's trying to help him escape. And Vinder asks the pertinent question. If everyone else in here was gone, why are you still here? And this was Dai's answer.
To them, I'm insignificant.
No, that's wrong. That makes no sense. They went out of their way to get her. Everyone else they ever captured into the passenger form were just whoever they managed to get to come to them. You know, whether it be Vinder trying to sneak up on them and they capture him that way, or just people who thought that the passenger form was the savior. They're not hunting people down. They hunted her down. They went to Earth to find and capture her. Why? Why did they do that? And the fact we get an answer to why she's still alive in there, which is that she's too unimportant. But that makes the question of why they took her just inexplicable. It's like Chibnall forgot that they targeted her. He forgot that he wrote that they did that. And I don't know if he actually did forget, but wow, does it feel like it. You want to know the other thing he forgot? He forgot that in the previous episode, he'd established that a whole big chunk of the universe was already destroyed by the Flux.
Which part of the universe is this?
All of it.
No? There's nowhere near enough of it.
And that does not get addressed in here at all. Like, I did my best to pay as close attention as I could to see, because they even lay out something that feels like maybe it's meant to cover for this, because Swarm and Azure have this whole thing where, like, their plan is to have the Flux come in at a focal point, but then go back and recreate everything, and just so they can destroy it again. And I remember thinking, okay, right, so that's how we get the rest of the universe back again, right? Except their plan never gets to that point.
The final Flux destroys. We stop it, wind it back, and watch it again and again.
They say they're going to do that, but they don't get that far. Nothing gets recreated, nothing gets fixed, nothing gets brought back. But it's also never acknowledged how much of the universe is just gone. Huge, massive swaths of it. Gone. And the show just forgot. I have to honestly believe that Chibnall just forgot that he did that. Because it's not brought up here. It's not brought up in the specials. I don't expect it to be brought up in RTD's stuff. Chibnall just forgot. Which, given how casual and callous he's been with death and destruction up to this point, I guess you lose track of 2/3 of the frickin' universe. Again, I do understand the time pressures and trying to rewrite at the last minute that this series went through, but good grief! How do you not at least realize in the edit that you did that and take out the reference in the previous episode to how much of the universe was destroyed? Because, like, a bunch of the universe is destroyed regardless. You showed us what the Flux did, but you didn't give us a full sense of the scale. At the very least, you should have cut the line about how much was destroyed, because that put it into perspective. And it's like, you can't just move. Swarm and Azure continue to be decently performed and are just there. Like, I honestly do not get what the hell is going on with this embodiment of time that takes on the aspect of Swarm and then kills them. But Azure at least seems like grateful for this and calls it Ascension. But so far as we can tell, it just killed them. And then it takes the Doctor's face and talks to her. But all it does is drop hints of the Master coming back later on.
Beware of the forces that mass against you and their master.
This doesn't wrap up this story. It doesn't explain what the hell just happened, what this thing is, what it wants, why. Really properly who Swarm and Azure were. They're just dead, and this embodiment of time, this entity that we've been told is evil, but is just kind of standing there being vaguely ominous and hinting at another villain. It's just there. Like, what? I do kind of like the Sontaran's plans. And I like that it's made explicit that they are being opportunistic. Because they weren't involved in the flux happening. But now that it has, they're finding a way to use it to their advantage. And while one could make an argument about whether or not the Daleks or the Cybermen would be as stupid as to fall into that trap, I would point out that they are desperate, that so far as they know, there's no way to escape the flux, and they are offered a way to possibly escape it. What are you going to do? Not take that chance and just get killed by the flux either frickin' way? So I don't think it's necessarily a problem or even a diminishment of either the Daleks or the Cybermen that they fell for that. Maybe they were played as like being a little too surprised when it happened, but going along with it, no, I buy that. I buy that. It's a solid enough plan as far as a Sontaran plan goes. Also, the Grand Serpent is there. Other than the torture scene, which again is a good scene for the banter and the dialogue and the dynamic between him and the Doctor, but other than that, he's just kind of there, and he just gets wrapped up and shoved through a door and left on a little asteroid in the middle of who knows where. Maybe it's another broken up planet destroyed by the flux that won't go acknowledged. Who the heck even knows? And then, of course, there's the other problem. The Lupari. So we are told, not shown, and I mean not shown at all, that all the Lupari other than Carvanista are dead.
Every Lupar on those ships, airlocked out into space. Their bodies now scatter the space lanes.
So, this one doesn't even seem like it's done for cruelty purposes. I've accused Chibnall of being casually cruel rather frequently, when just casually killing off characters left and right when it's not necessary. I do at least understand the logistical reason of why this happens, which is that the Sontarans need to take over the Lupari ships in order to enact their plan with the Daleks and the Cybermen. So there is a reason for them to take over those ships. They would kill whoever's on there. So there is actually a plot mechanics reason to do this. So it's not pointlessly cruel. It is really poorly done, though. Because both in terms of their being wiped out, but also their existence in the first place, the Lupari are a completely hypothetical entity. We have seen their ships, but the only one individual that we have seen that I can remember at all was Carvanista. We haven't seen any other Lupari. So when you say they're all dead, first of all, okay, that's meaningless. We have not even seen them. We don't even know if they all look like the same kind of breed of dog as Carvanista, or if some of them look like more like bulldogs or Pomeranian. We don't even know that because we've seen literally none of them. They're all wiped out. Okay. And then the other thing that's really poorly handled is the reaction. Carvanista's reaction, it's
I'm gonna kill every last Sontaran.
about as well as, being upset by the death of a hypothetical millions or billions of beings is. But the Doctor, who has been around mass amounts of death before, all that she acknowledges about all this is I'm so sorry twice.
Carvanista, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what the Sontarans did to the Lupari.
That's it. That ain't good. Again, honestly, while it is lazy and poorly handled in terms of, the Sontarans need to take over the ships. Just have them kill everybody. Like, it's a simple, lazy solution for a population of people we haven't seen, and you couldn't even milk decent melodrama out of it. I can't even get as worked up about this one as I have about some other instances of Chibnall's cruelty, because at least logistically, I understand how and why this happened. It's still bad and stupid, but I do get why it happened, which is a lot more than I can say for a lot of the other casual cruelty that's gone on across this show. So I'll take it, I guess. I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at the end of the day with this thing. I don't know. I don't know what this is. Flux overall, again, I will grant on this revisit, there was good that I didn't recognize before. And knowing that I wasn't going to like ultimately where it went allowed me to see more good in episodes that I largely remembered the flaws, like Village of the Angels, and finding just a lot of good stuff that I'd flatly forgotten in something like Once Upon Time. But we get to the tail end and it's just buried in plot logistics. There's no emotional core. The villains are poorly established. It just doesn't pull together. It is doing too much with too little. It can't juggle all this, and it just all gets dropped in the end. Quite literally. That freaking watch literally just gets dropped down a hole. Never comes back. Normally, I kind of like the idea of writers like leaving threads for future writers to pick up on, but this is failing to finish your own story. This isn't leaving plot threads for somebody else. Anyways, The Vanquishers. It's Flux ending with a like a balloon with the last of the air let out of it. Whatever your thoughts on it are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. There's links to other things that I do down in the description. And ultimately, the like, share, subscribe, those things help. Checking out any of my stuff helps. But what I really want you to remember, this is what's really important. You are beautiful. You are valid. And you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.
Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and in particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Leotha Boyd, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabulax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, David Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. You can get your name in the credits too if you feel like hearing me possibly struggle with it for several times before getting it right.